folks. Welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you on Power Talk. And thank you so much for making us part of your day today. And as I've tried to ascertain how to interpret and to engage the multidimensional self in music, it has been done through the guys who weren't necessarily the masters or the shamans of the music, but they were able to learn from those cats because in a lot of ways those guys were still alive on the bandstand. Sam Cooke and Ray Charles, Bill Monroe and Charlie, maybe Dizzy and John Allaire and Fats Domino. And because they were able to taste that essence, they were able to incorporate that language into their music and bring it into a more modern sound. But now that we deal in an age of quantized rhythm, in pop music especially, it's a very dangerous time, lack of authenticity, and there's a homogenization of sound. And the first time I interviewed this cat, he was about as articulate as listening back to it. Some of the stuff he said was profound, but at the same time, he's always trying to get out of his own way and stay humble and get back on the bandstand as soon as possible. Bill Champlin, an honor. Welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hey, Jake, how you doing? I noticed the song you were playing. It sounded like something Don Ellis did.
Dude,
I think I wrote that during my era where I was doing time signature stuff.
Oh, my God, dude.
Yeah, the Don Ellis. I mean, Jay Graydon is a friend of mine. He played with the Don Ellis band. He says, man, we had one song in 4/4. That was take 5.
No, I know that joke. Yeah, no, you know.
Some nutty stuff. Insanely great bunch of music. I mean, unbelievable.
You know what? I wanted to ask you.
I'm sorry. I mean, I'm going to go right on a tangent the minute we start.
No, it's fine. I mean, this, dude, just flow with it. But I wanted to ask you about this cat because, you look at someone like, when I interviewed Johnny McLaughlin, he said that it took him a year to learn how to play Love Supreme. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that, you're really merging the soul with maybe the American songbook or some kind of jazz formula. But you met a man named Albert Seiju. And I wanted you Seiju. And I wanted you to talk about how you met him and how he had an impact fundamentally on, because the stuff you're singing about, man, you can't see it. You're too close into it. But what you're talking, this transcendence in music and expanded consciousness, this was so far ahead of the game. And we're in 2020. This stuff is holding up better today than it did then. So did he set you on that course?
No, not particularly. He was just one of the guys we met. Our manager, Fred Roth, turned us on to Albert. And Albert was he was sort of one of the guys that was a crossover between the beatnik movement and the hippie movement.
Right.
Follow me?
I do.
And he was an American-born Asian Japanese guy. He had spent some time during World War II in a camp, which they did to people during World War II. And I think he contracted TB or something while he was in the camp. So he just went through a lot in his early days, and he was just a wonderful, wonderful cat. I mean, he's the guy that drew those pictures that we sold, and we gave away a bunch of them, and put one in the Loosen Up album.
Because I mean, you guys were going to parties in Mill Valley, at a pool down below, there'd be all these naked people going around. I mean, can you talk about that vibe?
At the time, I was married. I had a kid. I didn't, there was a lot of stuff going on. I didn't really pay too much attention to it. I was busy pretty much with my world. I was pretty much busy listening to other people's conversations and trying to, take it into, 4-minute ditties. 15-minute ditties.
No, I mean, I guess my point is this: like Felix Cavalieri found Sachina, McLaughlin and Coriel, they found Sri Chimnoy. I feel like the lyrics at that time, were you really into Eastern philosophy in order to ground yourself in the midst of this milieu of the biz plus family?
Yeah, I was around people that were deep into the Buddhism. I was around people, and there was a lot of conversation going on. It was the LS, and I was among them, but I never really found a guru, as it were. I just met a lot of different people and tried to listen to. It's like when you hear 5 different musicians do something, and you go, each one of them has something good. Well, you steal the something good from each one of them.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
You know?
Yep.
I mean, I was listening to conversations, meditation, and I was I wasn't talking that much. I was listening to a lot of these people speak. And I was just trying to, let it sink in and then let it come back out as lyrics. I mean, when I was in junior high, I got way deep into English and how to break down a sentence and so on. So I mean, I kind of had that chop going. So I was able to kind of lyricize a lot of what I'd heard around me. I think a lot of people say, "Oh, this guy's he's really high." No, I'm just copping what I.
Dude, I mean, that's.
I'm trying to put it into.
No, I was going to say that, like, I mean, truthfully, when you say, like, in that song we came in, "You Can Fly," the way you put the accent on the end. Can you talk about what you learned in English and how you transfer? Because you're right. I mean, it's more than even just where it falls where your vocals fall in the beat, in the pattern of the song, because that's kind of offbeat to begin with. But then it's also the verbiage itself. I mean, can you extrapolate and put it onto a song?
What basically happened with me is that I was starting to listen. Are you still there? My phone's cutting in and out.
No, I hear you good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, I was, when I grew up, I was listening when the Beatles started changing their lyrics around and they started getting deep into it. And Bob Dylan was insane. Great lyrics. I was digging all that, but at the same time, I'm a fan of R&B. The problem was with R&B is that most of it didn't have lyrics that said anything other than bullshit. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I kind of went, why don't we take this, trying to get uplifting songs that speak to what's going on to us in our community at the moment, and see if we can lock it in with R&B.
Oh man!
Because I still an R&B fan. Love it.
I mean,
so that's kind of what I did. Sort of what
Yeah.
Sly did around the same period of time. Sly started writing some pretty cool lyrics. I mean, the Stand album is just the song "Stand" is unbelievable. It's beautiful. And it was, instead of underdog, he was very talented. Unbelievable. If I'm gonna write, I want to write stuff that makes sense to me. I mean, the first real Stone song I wrote was a song called "Everywhere," which was like the day after my first acid trip.
It just sounds like you're in a deeply. I mean, I get it. I totally understand you weren't in a practice or any kind of guru thing, but it was just sort of in the milieu and it was rubbing off into your. I mean, because the songs, whatever you took, whatever you begged, borrowed, and stealed on that period of time is magical, man. And maybe you didn't have the right cats on the albums or things like that, but. I mean, by the time "You Could Fly" and there's this song about chopping wood, it's like, I mean, there's some really intense stuff going on, and I just think it's important as I've evolved, because when I first talked to you 5-6 years ago, I didn't really understand a lot of what you were talking about in terms of like how sophisticated the Suns music was compared to the rest of the Bay Area bands, and how Sly never really gets
in a timeline. What I was talking to more than anything. A lot of the timeline was that the Suns, we became kind of aware of the hippie movement, as it were, the LSD movement, the flower child movement, if you want to use those words. I never liked it that much. I got hay fever. Too many flowers. I just start sneezing. But,
but I mean the hippie.
You know what I mean? I was watching the scene fall apart behind amphetamines, and I was going, wait a minute, I feel cheated. I wasn't right. I wasn't right there in this. I missed it. I missed the beginning of it.
Yeah.
I was at the be-in, the human being in Golden Gate Park.
Right.
I didn't get it. It makes sense to me. I didn't know what was going on. I was just there to listen to the band.
I mean, were you tripping out, or were you just like hanging out?
No, I mean, I was so high I could go duck hunting with a full. I got to give the Tubes credit for that one. I heard that from one of the guys.
Of course, no. I mean, like you were. Listen, we have a game on this program, Bill, called Name That Voice. I'm going to put this in for you right now, and we'll come back and break it down.
Okay.
Well, no, that was with the, not on Ghirardelli Square. It was with David Linneman, and I think it was called the Something Players. I was the musical director and the pianist for Bertolt Brecht's Mother Courage. I forget, a Threepenny Opera.
Oh my God, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. So I was doing solo piano. Then on opening night, I'd bring in 3 or 4 other guys just to augment it do a nice little production for opening night.
Wait,
Ellicott
was playing upright or electric?
No, he was playing electric.
Okay, so this is so important because you had I've interviewed all these Jerry Grinelli and Noel Jukes. These guys were like stretching.
Was that Paul Schaefer you were talking to?
Electronic jazz. Were you just playing?
We're still not where I want to be yet. Hold on.
Original comps.
No, we're playing for casuals. We're playing just straight casual, just casual type of music. But then I would write some stuff either for the theater gigs, and then even Bill Champlin and I and Rob Moitoza played a few standards. And what I loved about doing that, except Rob didn't play, with Bill and Jeff Palmer, we would switch instrument. I'd play B3 and I'd play drums, and then he'd play bass. We'd switch around.
Wait, this is blowing my mind. Champlin was playing bass?
Oh, yeah. Bill would play B3, or he would play bass, or obviously sing, but there was only 3 of us. And then, I would play out there with their studio out there in Mill Valley, and it's Jeff Palmer.
You want to take a guess at who that is?
I'm not sure who that is.
Yeah, well, I've been on this journey for a while, Champlin. That was my interview with Raoul Matute from March 2017.
Oh.
And I wanted you to talk about these the fact that how did you guys pull that off in a live setting where you guys were rotating instruments?
Well, Jeff, Jeff Palmer he's an amazing musician. He plays tablas. He plays all the keys, played sax. We had a trumpet player who had a kind of a bad acid trip the day before the beginning of the loosen up sessions, and he was in Napa that quick. He went kind of nuts, Jim Beam, good musician.
Oh man, that's a
bummer.
But
he went, he just one caught him by surprise. It just tagged him real hard. He just went kind of crazy, and but what an amazingly great trumpet player. So we went into the session. Tim's got the tenor tone of the world. I love his sax playing and his arrangement in those days. He would arrange like the Beatles arranged vocals. It wouldn't just be 3-part stock stuff. Tim would arrange, great unison lines and counterpoint lines. He was just amazing in those days, And Jeff was playing alto. He was right on the money with alto. And we said we needed, we could have us. So we went with Jeff, with the alto kind of being the soprano, the Tim's sax, tenor sax being a tenor, and I played baritone because I played baritone sax all through high school.
Oh my God, Barry sax.
Hey, you gotta love a saxophone with a spit valve. You know what I mean?
It's just like the bumblebees, and it's But were you? I guess my question is, tracks like the Crusaders.
Yeah, you just cut out in the middle of a sentence. You want to go back?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, what songs translated over in the Ghirardelli Square? Did you play jazz gigs like in trio form? And which why was the Les McCann stuff and the Crusader stuff applicable to more R&B and rock music?
Well, I think they were, for an amazing bebop player, but I think at some point in the game he played more like a preacher would preach.
Right.
He kept going to the one, and then Les McCann, forget about it. I first became aware of Les McCann because he did an album, his trio did an album with Lou Rawls. And that was just sweet. There's a version of obviously I was and I'm still a Lou Rawls fan. I just love his phrasing. His back phrasing was amazing.
Yeah, I was going to say
Did you ever go on the Chitlin circuit or wind up playing in the? I mean, I remember talking to the house piano player at Bop City, and he said the white cats that would go into the Fillmore district when it was all black owned was Bill Evans, Vince Guaraldi, and maybe Chet Baker. But I was just wondering, like, and then there was all these like Chitlin circuits, in Hayward and Concord.
The Fillmore was owned by a guy named James Sullivan.
Right.
And I remember going in. I remember going and with a friend of mine, it was a neighbor who lived in the apartment next door to mine. Black guy, nice guy, Ted. I forget his last name, but Ted's his guy. And he brought when James Sullivan had for the Bobby Bland Review, and that was insane. It was beautiful. Just watching that happen because there was a Joe Thomas band. Al T&T Braggs was I remember the show. It was great. It was wonderful. And we saw James Brown a whole bunch of times. But and then I went to the Both And a couple of times. I heard John Handy at the Both And one time, which was really cool.
I'm just trying to.
So I was very. My mom used to take us when Oscar Peterson was in town. My mom would take me and all the rest of the guys in the opposite six over to the Black Hawk. And Black Hawk had a roped-in area where minors could go. I guess they served burgers or whatever, just to get around the ABC laws, the Alcoholic Beverage Commission. So, we went in hanging with Oscar Peterson when I was a kid. I mean, listen to that guy play. I'll never be that kind of piano player. At some point in the game, ain't going to happen. So I comped pretty well on organ, and then somewhere along the line I started singing, and I got into it.
Because you sang,
that's kind of what brought me to the ball game more than anything else. And all during that whole period of time, I was writing songs.
Did you cross paths with Al Jarreau and George Duke at the half note with the shit? I mean, because there was just so much going on, and you were, like you said, you found your vocal chops, but everything was just bubbling.
George Duke. I've known George. I knew George from my sister. He was such a great musician. He went to Tamalpais High School in Mill Valley.
Sure.
He's such a great musician. He was playing in the pit during some of these like operas. He was the piano player for one that my sister was singing. So I met him then. I realized what a great musician he was. And he said at one point, I was still in junior high. I wasn't even in high school yet. And a guy named Spud Murphy has got a rehearsal band, and I'm going to be playing with him. So I was sitting back there listening to George playing solos when I was just a kid.
No way. Wait. Oh, I'm sorry. It's Spud Murphy. What was this band? What was the band he was in?
It was just a rehearsal band, just a big band of cats that played together just because they wanted to play together. Not, there was a point where big bands on the road were almost impossible to do. It just cost too much.
Doing the.
But there were still guys, and it was called a rehearsal band. All they did was rehearse. Simple as that. And George would go down and sit in with them. They had a piano. All the horns and drums and everything were up on the stage. The piano was down on the floor, down at, I guess, a basketball court maybe. And just listening to that, and especially listening to George Duke play, he's amazing. He was an amazing man.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to. I mean, the origins of Bill Champlin are astounding. I mean, this was
at Tam High. I think when I was a freshman, George was a junior.
I want you to talk about this, though. This is from my interview with John Allaire. He said, I was playing at a bowling alley in San Rafael, and Champlin and Haggerty used to sneak in. They were underage. I was around 19 years old and had an organ trio. I mean, can you talk about John Allaire in his prime, dude, kicking pedals and sing? I mean, I need to hear this stuff.
He was as good as it gets. We'd go in the bowling. He was in the lounge. And open the door and listen to John through the door. Pete Lynn was playing drums.
Oh yeah.
And it was, John Allaire was the kind. I think he's more than anybody probably the father or grandfather of Marin music. I mean, he was great. It was one point I wanted to take lessons from him, and my mom brought me over to his house. And there was just so much going on that he kind of didn't pay attention to me that much, and I went, being bad, you know what I mean? Some people teach, some people don't, you know what I mean? I don't know whether he ever did or not, but he was an amazing musician, unbelievable. And I think John was in Custom Keys, wasn't he?
He was in, I don't know what, I mean, I know that
he was Tony Williams' piano tuner for many years as well. I mean, and he's cooking.
Wow.
He's still cooking with Van Morrison. But the thing is, who in your mind were the forefathers of Marin music aside from Allaire?
Adam Fourman.
No, see, that's a name. So who is that?
Adam Fourman was a musician. He played with a group called Swinging Deacons, which had Rob Moitoza on bass, Steve Regalia on drums, John Cipollina on guitar, and Adam on either guitar or piano. Whoa. Adam played everything, and he played it well. And he's a PS guy, and that's how he made his money. And Adam was almost a mentor in a lot of ways. I mean, I was hanging out with him when I was like 15, and somebody asked him, "Hey man, you know any piano players?" He said, "Yeah, Bill. He's bad." and it got me in a band called the Falcons.
Oh man!
And where all the players in the Falcons, Ed Booth was one of the members of it. Ted Kemmer was another one. Somebody played bass. Good musicians. They were all 15 playing with these guys. But it was you learn a lot in that situation.
Maybe
it's funny. The next thing I know, 5 minutes later, the guitar player in Chicago was about 1 year older than my son.
Right. I mean, it just yeah. Right. You're like, where did the time go? No,
what happened here? You know what I mean?
I mean, I told you,
I mean, Adam was a big timer. Lena was a major player in the early days. I was actually hanging with Adam, and the Deacons were playing a gig at Sausalito Women's Club. And I just went with him just to hang out in the wings and listen to the band, because me and Adam were kind of close. Good friends, right?
Yeah.
And at some point, John looks over and he had an extra guitar. It was like a baritone guitar, like, almost bass guitar, but the first time I ever played on a stage.
Are you kidding me?
And it was John Cipollina. He said, "Hey, come on, it's just a little gig. Come on out and play." Sweetie pie. And I was really good friends with Mario later on, quite a few years later.
No, I was going to say, did Gino?
They just lived up the house from our house.
Did Gino get you your first mortgage?
No,
because he did for Garcia. He did for I think Kantner.
I don't remember. By the time I got around to mortgages, I was long gone.
Yeah, the Champlin dude. Listen, Matt. So you're telling me Fourman is a peer of Allaire? Was they the same age?
Well, they knew each other. I mean, but they both did the same thing. So I mean, it was one of those things of like, I mean, one time me and Mike Finnegan did a session together for his guitar player, and on the one song he played piano and I played organ. The next song we switched.
Were you ever in it?
Man, why don't we do this more often?
I know, dude. I want to know.
And he said, "Hey, producers either hire you or they hire me. Simple as that." You'd be hiring the same guy twice.
Can you talk about how? I couldn't ask a better person. How the contours of the music rhythmically were different with consistent people that were consistently kicking pedals for bass lines, as opposed to when the bass came in, when the electric bass came in.
Well, I was never much of a pedal player. I just kind of I always had bass players. If I touched the pedals. Even in the opposite six, I had an organ with like a small one-octave pedal array on a console, and every once in a while I'd hit it, and Moitoza would go through the roof. So, man, you can't do that. We got a bass player. Don't do that. And then I saw Tower Power, and you had Rocco playing bass, but you saw Chester hitting accents on the pedals, and it really made the ones count. And it was just such a smart move of usage of pedals. I'm not very good at it. I saw B.B. King one time with at Fillmore, and he had two horn players, a drummer, and Duke Jethro was playing organ and pedal. Oh. And it was great because I think he had a Cougar set, which means that you have 2 octaves of the pedal note, and with a Cougar setup, the top octave will sustain till the next note.
I wasn't even worried. I know you weren't like a huge pedal kicker, but because you were infatuated with Pete Lind and Allaire and those guys, to me it seemed it created a sonic space in the music that sort of got, again, part of it was just the wonkiness of music as we got into the 70s deeper in, more notes are being played, more language, but yeah. I just wonder about,
because I listen to Chester Thompson on some of these records pre-Tower of Power, and it's like, dude, it's fucking, it's tenor, trombone, drums, and Chester, and it's like, these bass notes are like, they're very weird and cool.
At the off Plaza Lounge on Broadway, on Masonic in San Francisco. The joint was jammed. I had to listen to him from the street.
Yeah, Rudolph Johnson was there. Yeah.
Oh man,
dude,
that one of the best. But
yeah,
it's funny. I was in the choir at College of Marin, and S. Drummond Wolf was the choir director, but he was also an amazing organ player, classical organ player.
My God.
So we were doing Bach B minor mass. So he was playing organ, directing the orchestra and the choir, right? So we were in rehearsal. He had this big Lowry. We were in rehearsal, and I went up and said, "Man, you seem to know your way around the pedals." And he proceeded to play da 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 on the pedals, and I just about shit.
Whoa, man!
This is what happens. This is what you get when you practice a lot. He was way above College of Marin. I think what it was is he took the gig there so he could live in Marin County.
Absolutely.
But he should have been like the head of like San Francisco Conservatory or something. He was an amazing musician.
Did you
scared that piss out of me? I thought, wow, look at those feet. He's just flying while he's talking to me.
Right, it was effortless stuff. I mean, did you collaborate at all, or with like anyone at Mills College or Terry Riley or any of those like free classical people as well, or were you mainly?
No, my mom was at Mills College.
Wow.
And when actually Darius Milhaud was there, and she was in one. She took a few of his classes, and it's funny because she was doing. She had an English major and a music minor, and she did just to make a few dollars. She did copy, just grunt work, copying for Pete Rugolo and Stan Kenton.
Wow. No way! She was transcribing charts for them.
Yeah, just copy work. It wasn't. She wasn't adding.
Rugolo, are you kidding? Rugolo was up in the Bay Area.
Him and Kenton both took master classes with Darius Milhaud.
Oh, this is so badass. This is the most bad. No, that was Brubeck's cat, man. That's unbelievable. Yeah. Anyway, so they took master classes, and then your mom, as sort of just as a grad work, whatever student, was just
it's just movie money, that kind of thing. So she went ahead and did that, and she told me about it later. And I said, "Yeah, she worked for Sam Kenton." She said, "Yeah, he was there. He still had to do his band arrangements and stuff like that, but he took a semester living up there for just long enough to kind of be with to take Darius Milhaud's master class. Almost everybody in his class was badasses,
My God,
like
dude.
Like you say, Brubeck and all these other people.
I mean, just the idea.
I think the whole Brubeck band was based out of Oakland.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the one that I'm from, I don't know if Morello was in Oakland, but
Desmond certainly was.
Did you hang and because there are a couple guys that I've been trying to get on the program, and because people think James Brown was the originator of funk, but Johnny Talbot was the originator of funk.
Ooh, that's Johnny Talbot and the Thangs.
And the Thangs, and I'm like, I know Champlin was dancing his ass off, but how close because those guys were playing the Continental, there was all those ridiculous clubs in Oakland, and I'm like, I know Yorma told me that he used to, I think he might have played with Johnny. Did you ever get a chance to play with any of those bands? And what was that? Those guys were fucking.
Hey, I'll tell you one that you probably don't remember is Eugene Blacknell and the Symphonics.
Well, no, I was born in ;78, Bill. This is all before my time. Right. But no, Eugene Blacknell. No, I know the name. If
it wasn't for Johnny Talbot, Wilson Pickett wouldn't have 3 of the hits that he had.
Now explain why.
Well, I think Johnny Talbot put out the original version. I think it was Johnny Talbot, the original version of Land of a Thousand Dances, Funky Broadway, and one other one. I can't remember.
I'm going to look.
Two of many.
He was the, and then Otis took, because Otis was living on those houseboats in Sausalito, so he for a
little while, yeah.
Yeah, but then you're saying he took those and turned them into hits.
No, not Otis. I'm saying Wilson.
I'm sorry, Wilson. I'm sorry, I got it confused. Otis was the one on the dock of the bay.
Well, the thing is that Otis was produced by Steve Cropper, and like sitting on the dock of the bay was kind of Otis and Steve. It might just say Otis, but Steve was one of the writers on the song. And Steve actually produced Wilson Pickett's Midnight Hour, and co-wrote the song. So that guy Cropper was in the ball game early on in the Memphis world. You know what I mean? Him and Duck and Al Jackson and Booker. Booker T and the MGs played on just about everything that came out of Stax Volt, and Steve produced a good portion of it.
He absolutely did.
You want to hear some great rhythm guitars? Get the Born Under a Bad Sign album by Albert King. Now, first of all, Albert plays great. He's got a great feel. But listen to the rhythm playing on that album. It's Cropper at his absolute best.
Did you go?
I listen for that kind of stuff. It's like, who's doing this?
Right.
Who's setting up this groove? That's why, as much as I've always been a Jeff Porcaro fan, but I've been a nut over Jim Keltner, because Keltner lays it back just a little further, just a teeny bit further. And that's, Traveling Wilburys. Dig their tempo.
I dig. And I dig the fact that Keltner, the reason he's just a little bit farther back is because he played with Bobby Hutcherson and he played with John Handy, and he was able to play with those guys. Porcaro was just a little bit too young, even though his dad was a monster. But did you go to...
Well, I asked Jimmy, I went to a Christmas party and Jim was there. I said, so tell me, what's the story? Where did you get this kind of back groove that you got?
Right.
He says, really from emulating two drummers. One of them was I forget his name, but the drummer from AC/DC. And the other one's Ringo Starr. He said, a lot of people give Ringo shit about his playing. He is a motherfucker.
Yeah, he's so himself. He's so himself that it's somehow he gets flack for that, but nobody does.
But his time and where he puts it. And I asked him, Jimmy asked him about it. He says, Ringo, where did this back thing come from? He said, well, those songs are so good. If you play them too fast, you don't get it. If you play them a little bit slower and you put it on the back end, it makes the songs more important. And when Jim told me that, I went, wow, that is a really cool way of defining what a really good groove is and the reason there's a really good groove.
Oh, man.
It makes the songs more important.
So, this is, again, a question for Champlin, who was bouncing all over Marin County marinating in all this incredible music. Through my research since I last talked to you, it just became very evident. Garcia came out of the folk aesthetic. Yorma did. The first surf rock guitar player in the Bay Area in that vein was Jerry Miller and John Cipollina.
No.
Who was the first rock guitar player?
Really good blues player. You follow me?
Yes.
Yeah. Cipollina, I don't think surf had anything to do with it. Everybody listened to it, but you're talking about Marin County. It's right across the bay from Oakland. The bottom end of Oakland is east 14th. That's the deep black part of town. Marin County always had a feel for that. Drive across the go from Oakland to San Francisco, stop at the toll plaza and look over to the right, and there was the transmitter tower for KDIA. I was raised on KDIA, as was John, as was everybody. John was, he kind of discovered first time. When Creedence came out with I think their first hit, it wasn't their song. It was what the hell was it called?
I'll look it up.
First time I heard it was, first time I heard it was was after the original, and I heard the Deacons playing.
Oh, I Put a Spell on You.
No, Susie Q.
Susie Q, Dale Hawkins, Eleanor Broadway, Stanley Lewis, yeah.
Yeah. So, that was really the Creedence's first hit. You think about it, and it wasn't their song. It turned out John was an amazingly great songwriter, and came flying through. You know, it's funny. I was hanging out with Jason Sheff. We were talking about Creedence Clearwater. He says, "Well, they're from Memphis, aren't they?" I said, "Are you kidding me? They're from Berkeley. It's a San Francisco band. What do you mean?"
You told me that too. And the same thing with Sly is that those bands never were recognized as San Francisco bands for some reason. They fell below the. No. But I mean, George Duke, going back to him, he grew up in Marin City when Marin City was housing barracks for World War II people of color. So even Marin County was not as boutique as it was. It was a gritty area. So you were just melding that together. But I just want
I went to the school that everybody in Marin, the high school that everybody in Marin City went to. Now, if you go up to San Anselmo and San Rafael and Novato, right, Carolinda, and all those high schools up there, they were all totally white. You know, that's the way.
That is so badass. That is the roots of Champlin. You went to this. You went to that. What was that experience like?
Well, it was cool. I mean,
it was so cool, man.
I think right around the time riots were going on around the country, and Tamalpais High School had their own little race riots, and they were small, and nobody pulled knives and guns or anything, but there was a lot of hands flying and stuff like that. And this was 1963. Rob Moitoza went, I want to throw a concert to try to bring this community together. I mean, that's how early Rob got into it, and he put together this whole show at the basketball court, Rudy Scott Auditorium at Tamalpais High School, and he called it Soulville 63. And George Duke's trio played it, Opposite Six played it, and it really kind of brought our little, our small community together a little bit. I mean, everybody suddenly, we were backing up black artists, so we had to rehearse with them. So we'd all, we'd hang out together because, Rob just realized that, hey, nobody's talking to each other. If you start talking to each other, we're all going to realize we're just people.
That's right. That's right. That's brilliant.
To do with anything.
Yeah, brilliant.
And this was in 1963, and Rob was on the case immediately. I remember coming out of school just to go walk home. And I saw somebody flying through the air out on the street, out on Miller Avenue. I was going, whoa, this is rare. What's this about,
This was
I really never – I mean, I've always been completely and totally just distracted by music and songwriting and production and playing, all the rest of it, I'm not that good a player. I'm a good comper. Like I said, I play great rhythm guitar. I'm not the world's greatest soloist. I can get away with one or two, but after a while, it's the same solo over and over again. And but lines, I just really learned a lot from Tim. With lines, I learned a lot playing with Jeff Palmer about where organ fits and how you can comp with it and stuff. I mean, I've always just been distracted by checking out other musicians more than anything, even more so than myself. I've been in a lot of they did as well as they did. They really paid attention to themselves and everything. I've always been the guy that says, well, I don't really count as much as this other guy because right at the moment he's badass. I want to pay attention to what that guy's doing, and I'm not a spring chicken anymore at all, and I'm still that way. I hear somebody that's knocking me out, it flips me right out. I just like, whoa, dig this guy. Anyway.
No, I mean, I think that the fact is that you were, just to be clear, I mean, you were backing up other cats in the high school. I mean, this was basically just sort of sock hops and this was pre 66 or 67, whatever.
But in a lot of ways, in some ways, I've been in maybe 4 or 5 bands in my whole life. Opposite Six for a couple of years, and then that kind of morphed into the Sons. And the Sons for, 13 years? Then I bailed out of that, and the next band I was in, per se, was Chicago for 28 years. And then I've just put together something, released an album called Bill Champlin of Wonderground. It's with Tamara and a friend of mine, Gary Falcone, great guitar player, good singer, too. And so that was kind of a band at some level. So, I've had a few different bands, but not that many, you know what I mean? And I've always tried to just, what we're doing is, what I'm about at this point in the game is usually my band. There was when I was a teenager, there was family crap that was just out of whack, right? In my family. So I kind of had a family, and I just sort of traded in my family for my band. So I've always related to the band as a family. You know what I mean?
Oh, very much.
This is what. Yeah, I mean, the level of importance to me was as much as family, which is out of whack. But at the time, it was the only way I could find that brotherhood and that closeness that you want to have. It was with my band, and at the same time, once I got a band and everything, and I realized it's kind of built around me. I want to surround myself with badasses. That's where Terry Haggerty comes in. You know, when that guy solos. Step back. Here comes some shit. You know what I mean? He's an innovator on. He's the first guy to really take bebop and kind of bebop solos. And it wasn't really bebop. It was sort of a cross between bebop and blues. And hit it with real hard. What is the word for it? Real hard preamp. So it sounded like Albert King or something. It sounded like Albert King, but it was the notes were crazy. I mean, this was before McLaughlin. This was before even Carlton. This was before any of these guys were doing anything.
Well, no, but I mean, also the LSD. The LSD was a big component. Those live shows, he's tripping his face off at those shows.
Yeah, he had really, really great nights. There were moments where there were nights where Terry just was. It just was, but
what you're talking about is the spiritual frequency of it.
Great.
Throw the genres out, Yeah, I mean, to me, like he transcended the music himself. He was so plugged in, and his frequency was so high that it just carried everybody out. The genres just disappeared, But I have
with Terry, it wasn't as much drugs as it was DNA. I mean, his dad was a monster. Great guitar.
Believe me, the Cat shared gigs with Jerry Hahn. They were the two best guitar players in San Francisco, the Bay Area, and Santana and Garcia both looked up to him a lot too. So I mean, Terry's the man.
He was a bad boy. I mean, it's funny when you talk about Jerry Hahn, when the Jerry Hahn Brotherhood.
That was the be-in, yeah.
Yeah, they were playing a gig in the beginning in Katati, right? And I was a young guy. I was like, 20.
You told me this story. Finnegan walked in and humbled your ass.
Oh man, it was like salting a slug. It
was
over.
Dude, no. I mean, the guy is still crushing, dude. He's still on fire.
This guy's a primal force, and he still is. He's still bad to the bone. You know what I mean? It's just one of the greats of all time, for my money, anyway.
I got another voice for you, Mr. Champlin, and we'll come back and break it down.
I remember one of the first times that happens, and it was just with that band, Jimmy Ford and the Executives, and I remember playing a show at a ballroom, and walking off stage, and I'm like woozy almost because I got high. It's the first time I'd ever gotten what's called high on the music,
Right.
I literally, and Walt walked up to me and said, "You got high. You really got off that time, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah, I did." He said, "This is." So it was like, it was actually being high without drugs or anything, and it was, it's something that we all strive for. Don't always get to, but as I'm getting older, since I've had a lot happen to me. I basically had everything taken away from me, and for reasons that no need to go into. We don't have a show long enough. It's in my book,
Well, we can do a couple parts here, but I don't even want to go there. To me, it's not even. I mean, you're a resilient character. That's all that matters.
Yeah. I mean, but it's something that I strive for. That musicians, that we all strive for. Once you've experienced it, it's something we strive for every time we play. Sometimes things get in the way. Sometimes technical difficulties get in the way. Sometimes acoustics aren't. Sometimes the vibes are weird. Sometimes you're just not in the right space to do it. But I always aim to do that. I always aim to get high from the music.
All right, Mr. Champlin, who is that?
Oh, Danny Serafin. Who else?
You're right. That was my interview with him from June of 2018, and I wanted you to talk about when you guys started to play together, how quickly you were able to begin to operate on the frequency that Wayne Shorter describes as, if you really want to play music, in quotations, you have to have the feeling of going to the store to get your grandmother some milk. It has to be a devotion, a love. And how quickly did you guys tap into that frequency? And is it really something that
can be really verbalized, or is it just magic?
Well, magic happens. You know, people always say, "Wow, you're really an artist," and I'm going, "No, I'm a craftsman who occasionally backs into being an artist." Like songwriting, I look at songwriting as, you know, you it's a craft. There's a certain craft about it. Poetry is a certain craft about it. But if you do it enough on a regular basis, and the same thing holds true for music, if you do it enough on a regular basis, occasionally, you know, because you do the craft, you apply in music, you apply the sharps and flats and the you know, the stops and goes and the key signatures. You apply that stuff that you've learned. But occasionally, especially if you've learned it well and you do it and it becomes secondary to you, occasionally you're out of yourself and something else gets played by somebody else and you're just the vehicle for it. And that I've seen off and on for my whole career. And boy, you want to talk about a Jones. That Jones, you know. And the way to get that is to apply your, you know, to work your craft. And if it's not artistic at the moment, still work your craft, because eventually something will come down, grab you, and give you what you need. You know, and you go, that wasn't me. That was energy. You know, call it God, call it, you know, whatever you want to call it.
The divine. No, I mean, did you get to a point where, I mean, McLaughlin talked to me about it, you know, where you're trying to find that place of spirituality without hard drugs. And did you get to a point when you got your craft up and you were able to be disciplined enough to be able to find that space? How early in your career were you able to get off be able to access that spiritual plane in a completely straight state?
Well, you know, I was kind of nuts for a long time. I did a lot of actually probably just start with a lot of drinking. And then when I took, you know, started smoking weed and doing LSD, I stopped drinking for quite a few years, like 6-7 years. Mm-hmm. And then I started back up again right around the time cocaine came around. You know what I mean?
Trouble.
Yeah. And trouble began. The trouble started, and you know, and I'd been drinking, you know, for a long time. And it was quite a bit later, 1985. I checked in and I put the shit behind me. You know, and you know, after having cancer a couple of years ago, I was doing marijuana, you know, medicinally doing marijuana. Sure. All my doctors said it won't cure you, but it'll make it so you're not going to throw up all the time. But, okay, I got that. That's really kind of what you use it for. A lot of people are saying, hey, CBD will get rid of your cancer. Yeah,
it just makes you let you eat a little bit, keep your food down.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of comes into that kind of stuff. And I just kind of went, you know, some of the best music that I did in my life, I was blapped out of my mind. And some of the best music I did after that, you know, sometimes it happened. You know, people always say, hey, I did drugs and the music came out because of it. No, the music came out in spite of it. And I listened to the stuff I did then. I was great. It was happening in spite of how high I was. You know what I mean?
So, but that gives the impression. In spite of means like the power of the music itself overcame whatever substance.
Absolutely.
Okay, that I have to get my head around too, because I'm not sure if sometimes the ideas that you would sequence together on the keyboards or be able to sing a certain way or take, you know, that might have come because you were out of your physical body, maybe with a substance, but in spite of seems, it's interesting you say that. It sounds like somebody who's been around the block a few times.
Yeah, I mean, I was in that scene, especially in Los Angeles. I was in that studio, booze and blow scene for a good long time. I did a lot of work, and I really kind of built a retro career. Had nothing to do with songwriting. It had to do with vocal arranging.
Dude, it's freaking badass, dude. Did you know Gene Page?
I did a lot of
background
vocal stuff for a lot of records, you know. And all the time I was banging too hard. I was hitting coke all the time. It was crazy, you know. I was out of my fucking mind. Let's put it that way.
Let's do it.
But
that's okay.
As was everyone else, and it just it sort of fit at that point.
Dude, everybody was out of their mind, man. Did you know?
At some point in the game, it just made me weary, and I checked in. I went into Hazelden in August of '85, And I went into, it was in Minnesota. It's like the granddaddy of all treatment centers. I went in there and and proceeded to spend a month and came home, and I haven't had a drink or done any blow since. It's 35 years or something.
Oh, yeah, Stan Getz went there.
Huh?
Stan Getz went there.
Oh, cool.
He was the only. He was the only cat. He was the only.
Clapton went there. Natalie Cole, I think, went there. A lot of different people have gone there.
Stan Getz was the only cat that they couldn't get him to shut up. He was the only guy they've ever taken out for a drink. That was the first night.
Well, when they picked me up at the airport, they said, "You want to stop at a bar before we check in? It'll be your last drink, but you feel like doing it." I said, "No, man, I just want to go to sleep. Forget about it."
Did you?
But I mean, it worked for me. A lot of people doesn't work for it. I mean, the what is it, recidivism or whatever the word is.
Yeah, recidivism. But something like that.
Yeah, it's too big a word for me. It's like some of the words for drugs. Hey, I'd like to get a prescription for triopanine.
It's like, yeah, exactly, dude. Levothyroxine, all this stuff. It's insane.
Yeah, I hear you.
Did you know
hydroxychloroquine?
Well, don't listen, man. I'm proud of you that you have stayed the course. Your spirit is still alive. Johnny Hartswell, did you know that cat, the B3 guy?
I've heard his name.
Yeah,
I don't really know him.
But did you ever go down to the South Peninsula to play with the San Jose at all, aside from the Suns?
Well, we did with the Suns, but we go in and play the gig and go right back. Hey, look at my granddaughter's here, and we're looking up at the pool, and we got a couple of ducks that have been coming in. So, and then they used to when I was in the opposite six, we had my drummer always said, "Champlin, you sound like a duck."
Who was the drummer?
Dick Rogers. He's a really good drummer. He's a really fun guy. He's a great dude. All the guys in that band we had a ball with those guys.
Well, one final question for you is Bill Matthew, Aladdin. How did you get into the Fairfax Street Choir?
I wasn't in the street choir. I did a thing with Pat Craig, and there were members of the street choir in it, and there were other players in it called, and it was there was also a real cool troubadour kind of singer named Jeffrey Kane who was in it, and he had a song called "Long Lost Mine."
Dude, are you kidding me? So Jeffrey Kane was on Raccoon Records with Lowell Levenger, dude. I love that cat.
Yeah, he was really, really a cool guy.
Yeah.
But really kind of in the Pete Seeger, Woody Guthrie kind of tradition, a guitar and some really great
kind of a
songs.
West Coast
really cool
vibe, though.
Yeah, a little bit, but he was really cool. He came and did a few songs. There was a handful of people in this group, and when they called it the Long Lost Mine Review.
Oh,
and actually we
my God, dude!
We started getting a little bit of books and stuff. He moved back up to Walla Walla, Washington. Sweet guy, became a pastor at one point. He had a group called Indian Pudding and Pipe.
Was that Kane? Was that, you're talking about Kane?
Pardon me? No, I'm talking about Pat Craig.
Pat Craig. Oh, Indian Pudding and Pipe. Herbie Hancock was the first keyboardist in that.
Say it again.
Herbie Hancock played keyboards on that album, Indian Pudding and Pie. Yeah, that was a Rubinson special right there.
No. Incorrect. We've gone left here. Indian Pudding and Pipe, as in smoking a pipe.
No, I know. David Rubinson produced their one album, and Herbie Hancock played keys on it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we didn't turn left. No. The reality is that, like, dealing with the adversity that you have faced with cancer, overcoming it, and still being as sharp. I mean, you are right. We've been all over the place. Can you give a little talk about, because you never had a guru, you've really seen all the warts and all of life. I just wonder if you could talk about how ultimately you, in this time, not being able to be on the bandstand, are able to fuse mind and body and create aura and spirit.
Well, you got to realize September 12th of 2015, I was diagnosed with a really high level of aggressive prostate cancer. September 13, my older son, Brad, passed away from esophageal cancer. So the C word around my house, I hate the word. You know what I mean? I went ahead and I chose, as opposed to doing radiation first, I chose surgery. They took it out and they went, you've still got it. And the doctors were, and you've still got it, and your Gleason count is way higher. You've got about as aggressive a strain as you can get. And I went, oh, okay. And I was still so devastated by losing my son that I just said, well, what do I do? I'll do it. So I said, all right, wait till this heals up a little bit, this thing heals up, and then do radiation. Then I went to the radiologist, said, I've got a friend who's really come up with he was the guy, one of the research chemists who came up with what is now considered the standard cocktail for breast cancer, came up with a cocktail for a chemo cocktail for prostate cancer that's still hanging on, even though the prostate's gone. So it wasn't encapsulated. They took out 24 lymph nodes, and 3 of them still had cancer cells in it. So they were a little bit freaked out. I didn't pay any attention. I said, you can't blow my mind at this point of the game. I just had my son die. Like, fuck is this? And then the radiologist said, go to this other doctor. So I lost my hair. I was wearing a wig for a while. They gave me this stuff that made my bones harden, because this particular, prostate cancer would rather not be there. It'd rather be in the bones. So they try to lock them out, So and that's what was going on, and that hurt. That hurt really bad. But other than that, food didn't taste like anything. It was like eating sand. And I just, at the same time, I was still, and I still am.
Yeah.
I was just kind of blown out losing a kid.
Sure, absolutely.
You don't want to outlive your children. It's as simple as that. It's mathematically incorrect. Something's wrong with it. Although so many people have, because of wars over the centuries. You don't send the old guys out to fight the wars. You send the young guys. And a lot of them come home in bad.
Did you have any closure, appropriate closure with him?
With who?
Your son.
Yeah, we were kind of at odds for a long time. He was I'm not going to whitewash his life just because he's passed away.
Sure.
He was a very, very out of control prescription drug user. And I was, at some point in the game, I said, dude, you got to not do this. It's just not happening. You cool it out. And he kept doing it, kept getting into trouble. He'd clean up for a while and just, go on runners and slip like crazy, and all of the above. It's happened to a million people. But when he pulled up lame with esophageal cancer, we were very close.
Good. Well, that's good. Because there's just, like you said, I have 2 young daughters, and
yeah, we were talking on the phone every day. I would go help him, take him to radiation appointments or chemo appointments and those kind of things.
But what you still...
Funny, he was taking chemo. He didn't lose one hair on his head. They went, we have to make it stronger because we really want to see you lose your hair. No, it just stayed on.
Unbelievable.
It was there till he died. It's like, well, typically it's the exception to the rule. Good kid. He was a good drummer. He was a really good drummer. Great singer. Sounded like Paul Rogers. Cool singer. Rock guy. Kind of a rock R&B guy, more leaning toward the rock. He was very cool. Great groove on the drums. Yeah, I miss him a whole lot.
Well, he's down.
Just became friends with him, and I lost him. We got really close the last 2 years of his life. Well, anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to say that, through all of it, you still want to be here. There's a purpose for you to be. Alex Litcherwood told me the other week, a couple weeks ago, he collaborates, he sees you, collaborates with you once in a while, but the urge to continue to create, what is your purpose what has been your purpose in life, Bill?
music, just to be as close to the center of it as I can, and music happens to be where I can become creative. I think it's creativity,
Yeah.
even more so than music. I mean, because a lot of times writing lyrics, other than rhythm, really has nothing to do with music. I'll put a melody on it, but that's the piano player or the guitar player talking. The lyricist himself is just a guy with a pencil and a piece of paper. I wrote all but one song on the first Sons album. I wrote with a pencil and a piece of paper. I didn't even have a guitar.
Wow.
And I'd write the line, the vocal line, and just put the chord up, write it up above, and then put then the next one the chords change, you just change it up, and then I'd bring it into the start throwing it out at the band, and we'd all kind of jump in on the arrangement. Really, mostly Tim. I mean, Tim was he was just so good arranging for the early Sons. He's one of, I mean, even to this day, when I'm arranging something, I go, what would Tim Kaine do? How would Tim relate to this? And I usually come back with the answer of like, less is more.
Right. And that's
find the simplest but most effective line and use it. That's kind of how Tim is. He's still one of my favorite musicians. Jeff Palmer, I don't think I've learned more music from anybody. And I work with David Foster a lot, Jay Gray. These guys are monsters. I paid very close attention to what both of them were doing, but in a lot of ways, Jeff really taught me a lot about music. Really he's a great brother. He's still bad to the bone.
Yeah, no, I caught a hang. He was he's one of these, sort of avatar players, an incredible cat, but yeah, I mean, it would be great do you have any inkling of, I mean, what's the first gig that you're horny to play if, when we start to reopen, and how, has this been the most, I mean, you lived through Vietnam. There was a draft. We really have had a volunteer army. My generation, Gen Xers, have not really had to sacrifice in any way, shape, or form. Do you consider this the most trying time in your life outside of the health issues? And then ultimately,
financially, it's the whole country. As a matter of fact, the whole world is aiming toward a giant depression,
right?
Because of this fucking bug. And now there's typically as America, the blame game is coming on.
Right.
Where does this bug come from, and who let it happen?
Which should not be the focus.
It
shouldn't be the
WHO. Who let it happen? It's mankind makes mistakes, and we got to live with karma from the mistakes that it makes. And it's not everybody goes, oh, it's the president, and it's this and that. It has nothing to do with that. That's got nothing to do with any of it. We're all above this. I mean, in the 60s when I was writing this music on the first Sons album, first, second, third, fourth, all the Sons albums for that matter.
Yeah.
Just the nature of the business. We need to get something that's going to get us better ratings than the other guys. So let's scare the fuck out of everybody.
Well, but I mean, like, if just on the flip side of that, if what people are saying, including the banksters and the people that run this country, that it used to be the mafia. I'm sure you played many mob clubs, in your day, and it's like, and it's like, now the banksters own it.
I was in a band called Chicago for 28 years. You're not saying nothing new to me.
Oh, dude, believe me, dude. That's going way back. But
I'm not going to delve into it
anymore. No. But what I'm saying is, even those cats are saying, in order to return to what we want, which is normalcy, you said this fucking bug, you need to have testing. There's nothing in place. That has to be done at the top.
They're coming up with way better tests. It's just things, you ever seen City Hall? It moves like molasses.
Right.
Just the nature of how big it is.
Things move.
We want it. I mean, you're looking at a generation. You're looking at a whole generation of people that want what they want when they want it, and they're doing the best they can, trying to come up with some stuff.
But Bill, I wanted to say something. You've been over and over again so humble about your contributions musically, and the truth is, a great leader builds a great team around him, and you defer to people when you know that they do things better than you do. And when W had Katrina, he got out of the way of his own ego and brought in a general to take control. And the problem with Trump is he should have done that a long time ago. He's not equipped to handle this problem. So it's going to get worse, and all I care about is a solution.
Are you telling me Fauci and Birx aren't experts?
I'm saying they're not. I'm talking about an implementation of a full country plan by our military the way they did at Katrina. Because, like you said, City Hall runs
They just did that. Dude, they just did that. They just handed over to a general in the Army to the whole situation of trying to get stuff out. And at this point in the game, and because of the governors screaming for ventilators, they've been working on the ventilators. The test, they just yesterday came up with a new test. It's a saliva test. And Trump's not going to drop it off at your house. This general, he's handing it over to the military to move this stuff around. So it's going to be faster. It's still big.
Yeah, all I'm saying is that you defer to people that Miles Coltrane used to come up to Miles and say, "What do you want me to play? What do you want me to play?" Miles kept turning his back on him, and Coltrane finally figured it out that he wanted him to be himself. And the problem is that Trump might have some incredible genius qualities to him. He should step aside. He should have stepped aside 2 months ago for this because he's not equipped to deal with this.
Just a quick aside, man. Miles one time he said that John Coltrane, when Coltrane was in the band, and he said, "John, your solos are getting longer and longer and longer. Any chance to let somebody else play?" He said, "I just don't know how to. I don't know how to finish up the solos." And Miles said, "Take the horn out of your mouth."
Yeah, right. Taking the horn out of your mouth. Also, that what?
Have you tried taking the horn out of your mouth?
What a novel idea.
Miles Davis is unbelievable.
Listen, before I let you go, I'm glad you brought that up. Haggerty told me that Miles and his wife came to see. Miles played with you guys at Muir Beach. Is that true?
Not that I remember.
Okay.
If he did, I must have been so high I could go duck hunting with a fork. I have no idea. I don't think so.
Well, no, I'm gonna.
Terry's probably got a better memory than I do. Yeah, it could be.
I'll just read you the story. Maybe it'll jar your memory. He said after a year, this is something you obviously can't forget, but about a year before Miles came out with his first electric band, we, the Sons, were playing at the Muir Beach Inn. We were playing in the late afternoon. It was in the loosen up naturally time when the arrangements were great and we had horns. We see this black guy come in and he's carrying a little trumpet case and a black woman with him. I look over at Bill and go, "That's Cecile Tyson." He goes, "Yeah, I think it is." I said, "That's fucking Miles Davis." She comes up to us and we're playing. The tune stops and she says, "My husband wants to sit in with you guys." Miles gets up on the stage. He does his Miles thing. A little note here, a little note there. He never says a word, to any of us. He hangs out for maybe 15, 20 minutes on stage. He gets down, doesn't say goodbye, just completely removes himself from us and leaves. Maybe 6 months later, he comes out with his first electric band. How badass is that?
It's something.
I'm glad I could tell you that story. Bless you, man. I'm really.
I don't remember.
You know what? It's okay.
And it was a club about half full, and we were playing. And in the song "Freedom," there was one point where I just kind of break down to a 2 and 4 drum beat, and I do a scat. Right. And so I'm scatting away, and it's all fine and dandy, and I'm scatting as good as I can do it, which ain't that great, but I'm doing it anyway. And at some point in the game, there was this one, kind of older black guy in the front row listening very closely. And so there was a backstage there, and this guy gets in the backstage. He comes up and he says, "Man, I love your band, your music, your songs are great. It was really cool that you were doing scat." I said, "Well, I'm no John Hendricks." He says, "No, you aren't. I am."
Oh.
John Hendricks. I went, "I scatted with you in the audience." If I'd have known that, I'd have shot myself.
Dude, I interviewed John before, rest in peace. That dude's the most honest. If he's telling you that, he's not jiving with. That's unbelievable. That's the highest compliment you can get.
I talked to a few different people. Roger Miller was telling me, I was doing some kind of something, and Roger Miller was there. He was a really brilliant guy. He's just like this back porch Einstein,
Right.
Just a real, he was just
back porch Einstein.
Way of doing it, but man, he's a brilliant dude, man, very brilliant dude.
Right.
And it was funny. He said, "Man, I got a house in Santa Fe, and I was quitting smoking, and it was really cold outside. So I go up to that gable in the house, open this bathroom window, smoke a cigarette, and do the smoke out, out the window
Sure.
so my wife doesn't catch it.
Yeah.
He says, from outside it looked like we were electing a pope. This was worth the flight all the way to Florida to hang with this guy. It was unbelievable.
All I'm
but
saying,
then I was talking to Les McCann, and Les said, man, anytime the Suns were playing and we happened to be in the Bay Area and we had a night off, we went all to see you guys.
Dude. That is, dude, all I'm saying is, man,
hey,
Champlin.
When we did the very first gig, when we kind of, in 96, 97, when we kind of put it back together again,
Right.
Actually, our first gig, we came up and played a gig in Santa Cruz, and then we did 2 nights in Fillmore. But our first gig was at Billboard Live, which is something else, a Key Club now, I think it's called, right on Sunset. And the joint was jammed, and up above the stage, you look up at the stage, and there's a sort of area that has I guess, if it was House of Blues, it would be a foundation room. It was a VIP room, and right next, and with a window to the band. I didn't find out until 2 years later Prince was up in that room watching the band.
What?
And we decided to try something really cool. We started the set with Freedom. Usually that's a set ender, but we started it. We just went right.
I love it.
after
I love
Freedom.
that. I love that.
And apparently the guy that was guarding the door is a friend of mine who told me about this. He said Prince was jumping around going, "Oh my God, they're starting with Freedom. I love these guys. I grew up on these guys."
Oh,
He never
my.
came down and said anything to anybody.
Dude, you know what I love, Bill? Seriously, what I love is that you've created so much on your palette, so much of your memory. Like you said, it was a blackout haze. Some of the best music made was in that state. And the fact is that Miles freaking Davis got his idea from the Electric Band, from the Muir Beach Inn with Loosen Up Naturally. That is the most...
I think that might
Dude,
have
do
been
not...
one.
Why would Haggerty's telling the truth, man?
Yeah, I'm sure he is, but I'm sure he probably sat in with some other people. I wouldn't, I don't like to take credit unless it's absolute for sure, and that's one I can't say for sure. I don't even remember it, to tell you the truth.
Well, that's the point. You don't remember because you were out of your mind. But the point is that all I'm saying is, man, you've always...
And as my friend used to say, man, I spent top dollar on my memory.
Man. Dude, Bill, honestly, man, we covered a lot of ground, and I feel like your son is looking down on us today, and I bless you and wish you a lot of success if and when we get back to normalcy, and just know that even the stuff that maybe you never thought had any significance or you threw it on the scrap heap, just know that in time, my daughters and future generations, that stuff will come back and be as resilient as ever, an incredible art form. And so you're a badass artist, man. Make no mistake.
Well, thank you, dude. I really appreciate it. So, a lot of people kind of don't get it. There's one thing that I noticed, one thing I learned around Chicago, and I kind of learned what not to do, is the minute you start gauging your artistry and your popularity and your success on your bank account, you've taken one of those, check your brakes off ramps off the highway. You're not.
Because you're no longer focused on the art itself. Is that it? You're no longer focused on the actual creation of art.
And I'm completely successful in that musicians that I really, really respect know who I am. They don't even have to have heard me.
Right.
But just the fact that they know who I am, it's like, wow. And it always surprises me because I just go on. It's like Jim Pankow in Chicago used to say, get home from the road. It's like, hey, rock star, take out the trash.
Dude, that's the Lee Sklar line, man. He gets off the road with Phil Collins and he's cleaning up dog shit in the backyard, man.
Exactly.
Yeah. But that's more of a studio guy.
What's going on, dude? I do all the dishes all the time in my house, and I have for years.
Can I ask you? I'm so glad I brought this up because, can you talk about John Morell, great guitar player? Probably crossed paths with him down. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But used to play at Shelley's Manhole.
It's not ringing a bell. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, very mercurial cat. But he was one of these session cats, and still very much through the time you were there. And he'd have to bring a 12-string and a sitar and a banjo. This is before he had cartage, And so he'd have to go to Universal for this soundtrack and this session date and this jingle. Like Randy Brecker told me, he had one day where again, this wasn't in the studio, but he went for he replaced Lou Soloff and went to Ornette's house for a rehearsal. And then later that day he was in the studio
playing mariachi horns with Johnny Cash. So I ask you, what was your most diverse studio day in Los Angeles when you went down there and sort of had that retro career?
Well, I did background vocals for Nancy Wilson, the jazz singer.
Jimmy Smith too?
In the morning, Nancy Wilson. You know who she is?
Of course.
Yeah, I did some backgrounds for her on like a pop record she was doing, and then that afternoon I went over to Michael Lloyd's house studio and did backgrounds for Donnie and Marie. So from Nancy Wilson to Donnie and Marie in one day is a bit of a run.
I just want to be clear. That's
and then next day
insane.
I did a Della Reese record. She's a sweetie pie. I think I did a Della Reese record and a LaToya Jackson record on the same day.
For what it's worth, in the All Music Guide, not that is the Bible, it says you are performing on a Jimmy Smith album called "Sit on It," backup vocal 76. I was like,
I came in for one song. Carmen Twilley called me and said, "We need you to come down. We'll get you." In those days, the flight from San Francisco to L.A. was about $35.
Oh yeah.
So they flew me in, and the producer of that product was Gene McDaniel.
Oh, wow.
Who had remember the record 100 Pounds of Clay?
Oh yeah, dude.
That was Gene, and Gene also I think he wrote or co-wrote "That's the Time I Feel Like Making Love with You," the Roberta Flack song.
Mm-hmm.
So Gene was a piece of work. He's a nice guy too. I dug him right off the bat. Very musical guy. I didn't get to meet Jimmy. And
I was thinking, I'm like, dude, Champlin was like, he would have freaked out if he had got to meet Jimmy. Dude.
Yeah. Oh, it would have been nuts. I mean, that guy wrote the book. I remember in my mom's car, I was driving. I remember exactly where I was when "Walk on the Wild Side" came on AM radio.
Mm-hmm.
I was going, I don't know what that is, but I have to have it. I don't care. Last time I worked, I was pulling weeds. I mean, I was 14, 15 years old. I was pulling weeds in people's backyard to make an organ payment. You know what I mean? That's the last gig. That's
so
the last
great,
real
man.
gig I had.
And Jimmy Smith, man. And then just so you overdubbed the vocal on it. I just wanted to be clear that I was like,
it was just a background thing, just like most of them are. I mean, I did about for a little while there. I was hotter than I mean, it's like what my dad said. I said, "Dad, I'm just working all the time. I'm just moved to town. I'm going." He said, "Just remember, the definition of an expert is the guy from the next county." He said, "And what's gonna,
what did he mean by that? That is so profound. What the hell did he mean by that?"
He said, "The definition, it's like, oh well, I'm gonna go with this guy because he's new." Foster had a great one. He says, "How about this? Who's David Foster? Get me David Foster. Get me a young David Foster who's David Foster." And he said, that's the way it goes. And I was, I came in, I think Jim Gilstrap had like all the vocal dates. I came into town, I got a bunch of them. I started doing a lot of the dates that were going on. After a little while, Rich, it was unheard of with vocalists. So I was the guy that kind of brought it up to double scale. So, and then what happened is that after about 2
Wait, this is important. This is important. You just cut out there for a second. If you worked, I know Emil Richards with percussionists for a long time. If you played timpanis, wind chimes, and tablet, or you only got paid for one, but then he advocated for double scale for percussionists. So are you saying that there was a period where if you did, no matter how many sessions you did, you only got paid for once, and then you were able to advocate for double scale?
Yeah, got paid single scale. It was just, we could take a half an hour. I could explain what an after contract is and how it works.
No, but what did you do I'm curious. What did you do? Like, what changed fundamentally in terms of musicians' rights, singers' rights when you got done down there?
Well, record. You've seen a retail shop anywhere lately?
No. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
It's pretty rare.
Dude, I mean, I did. My buddy's in retail, and he's like, on my job. I mean, he's like, all the stores, they didn't pay rent this month. They're not paying rent in May. Yeah, so not really. Kind of boarded up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's just in the music business, commerce stopped. There was no commerce anymore. Right. And very little of it, And thanks to Spotify, nobody's getting money as songwriters. or if they are, they're getting 0.000012 cent.
14 cents for 5,000 downloads or something, you know.
Yeah, that was stupid.
Yeah.
It's just gone left. Totally stupid. And I don't know how it happened. I think probably because of downloads. I know the people in the movie business were laughing at musicians. Guess what? It's happening now. The memory is so big. It's happening now with movies. So they're singing the same blues we've been singing all along.
But just to be clear, because I mean, listen, you guys were making. Listen, make no mistake, Ernie Watts, you guys were making so much dough in that time that you could go out and play for free at night, which you probably did. So I mean, at that time though, did you actually like when you first joined? If you did 3 sessions, you'd only get paid for 1, and then all of a sudden you got advocating for each session you got paid for. Like,
No. You get paid single scale for each one of those sessions.
Right.
And say, for instance, that was I think $32 a track, and you had to have a minimum of 2 tracks, so it was at least $60, and maybe more if that, and that was if there's three or more singers.
Right.
And then double scale would take all of that and double it. So if you have to have 2 tracks, so you'd start with $64, and it would be $120 something dollars.
Right. No, because a lot of those.
That's the difference between single and double scale.
Right. So
and
you're saying you basically
living on single scale is a bitch. I mean, it's really hard to do.
So
and once I did that, AFTRA, which is the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, they saw that me and a handful of cats were getting pretty decent money for singing. I mean, we did backgrounds on The Middleman. It was me and David Lasley and Luther Vandross.
Oh.
And Luther said, and David just took Luther Vandross.
Yeah.
And David Lasley. Lasley's a great singer. He was with James Taylor for years. And what ended up happening is Lasley wasn't paying much attention. He was the contractor on the gig, so he just took us in for single scale. And Luther had nothing to do. He was out here for a couple of weeks. He had nothing to do, so he took the gigs. And he was going, man, he says, in New York, Steve Gadd and, those players, Will Lee, all those guys, they all get single and their singers get double. He says, I don't leave my apartment for less than $2,000. And this was long before he had records.
Wow.
What a sweet singer that guy was. I miss him to death, man. He was beautiful. Oh, God, what a great musician he was. And, he read the fly shit off the page. But he was one of those guys. I know Carmen Grillo was doing a lot of, jingles, doing some jingles and stuff. And Lasley was on a lot of them. And Carmen was, they're in there singing some buy Coca-Cola or whatever the hell they're selling. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, the back door opens. This guy comes in, grabs a set of cans, and gets the chart and starts singing with him. And it's Luther. He's just keeping his reading chops up. He's a giant star. And, of course, the producer's saying, can I get a step out from the new guys? And no. So he was just singing with the cats because that's how he started.
That's right.
One of the singers in town, And if you listen to some of his live stuff, most of the really great musical stuff that's going on is in the background. Pitch for days, and every note that came out of him was just effortless. I was in awe of Luther Vandross when he first came out. Like, wow, this guy's amazing.
All right.
And he's by the time he had his second record, he says, I made more money on Wrigley Spearmint Gum than I did on my record. And it was a #1 record.
That's insane.
You remember the Nothing Like a Roller Coaster.
Oh, sure.
But that was Luther.
Patty
also said the same thing. She had that duet with James Ingram. What is it called? That song, I forget what the title was. Come to Me. And she said, I made more money off of Needy than I did off my record. Something to be said about that. You know what I mean? Like, well, where does that fit into the whole, modern music picture? You know what I mean? The scenario is a little ugly.
Well, I mean, this is.
I mean, you talk to me, you're gonna go on a million tangents.
Dude, we've already been. No, this is my final tangent. Is rate the following drummers: Garibaldi, Arrico, Shreve, Kreutzmann, Jim Preston.
Well, David Garibaldi's one of the top. Have you heard the new Tower album?
Man, we talked about this. I haven't yet. I will check it out immediately.
Go on my page on Facebook, and I just posted one of their songs. And oh my God, David's just as good as it gets. He's always been as good as it gets. He and Jim Preston for a long time was. I mean, David and Jim both took from the same
Chuck Brown.
Yeah, Chuck. And Chuck said, "Don't hit the drum so hard. Drums will sound better if you don't hit them so hard." And it took me a long time to dig that, because I saw a lot of drummers. This is what I think about drums. The drummer's job is to excite the singer, whose job it is to excite the audience.
Right.
And that's always the way I looked at it. So I have a tendency to lean toward the drummers that pound it a little harder. Jimmy, in his later years, pounded it a little harder. But he was always a little scared of his drum set, and they didn't really hit it hard. There was a point there where the Suns had two drummers. I put Fuzzy John Oxendine in with Bill Bone, and Bill's ego couldn't handle it, couldn't stand it. But here was a guy that hit drums. He meant it when he hit it. His 2 and 4, his time was ridiculous, and his just funk feel was unbelievable. We did like 3 gigs with 2 drummers, and then it all fell apart. Then when we went in to go do the Suns album, all we had was Bill, and it was nowhere near what it was supposed to be. I had to change that up seriously, because I was writing R&B. I mean, it might have been deep R&B, but it was R&B. And, I needed players that could play R&B. That's why Jim Preston and David Shalleck, the combination of the two of them, just great. They knew where the pocket was. They could get right on the backside of it just perfect and right at home. It was great. I've got Dick Methune on bass now. He's great. He's a great player. And Alan Hertz, who's unbelievable. They don't have quite the same connection that Jimmy and David did. There was just something about the way those two played together. It was just great. They just, they'd been doing it for years, so it was really, really a cool thing. I miss them both.
No, I was going to say going back.
Jimmy passed away, and David retired. He just moved up to, I think, Gray Eagle somewhere. He's a great bass player. Really good bass player, good musician, good guitar player.
You talking about Dave Shalleck?
Dave Shalleck, yeah.
Because that was Mario told
Love
me.
him.
Mario was that his brother was murdered, right?
Yeah, and his mother and father.
Yeah, that's Mario in one of my interviews told me a haunting story about that, being called at 5:30 in the morning by John, and to go and discover that. I just at that time in the '60s, I think you were so spot on in this new book I have. I mean, Ben Sidran said it too, because he was there with Steve Miller. He said it was literally the beginning of punk music, that psychedelic San Francisco scene, and you were there at the Straight Theater with the Dead, and you're like as un-R&B as the Dead were, whether you liked it or not. Their music got more musical. But from the outside looking in, not being part of the hippie movement, did you respect their music, or was it really a mess?
I'll tell you, we played a gig once. We were second lining. The third biller was, I think they were behind the Axomoxia album at that time. They were great, and then we did a gig with them. The weekend that we played with them, we were second lining them at Nassau Coliseum in Long Island. The place was packed. They did some free playing, and the way it all came back was unbelievable. They're not jazz guys on any level. They're not R&B guys on any level, but they had a real cool connection that was, couldn't be denied. Then we played just the one night with them at Nassau Coliseum, and then the next morning we got the call, and Shalleck was with us back east. We got the call, new writers are playing tonight, we're going home. I said, what for? I said, well, David's parents and little brother got killed. So we had to fly home with David.
You tell me absolutely. I'm trying to figure out because you were talking about playing with the Dead. Were you on tour with the Dead when you got the call?
No, we were just invited to open for them at Nassau Coliseum. Opening for the Dead is about as thankless a job as you can get.
Yeah, I know.
Except
if it was me, I'd be losing my mind in the front row. But it was unfortunate that you were inculcated with people that only listen to the great. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like if Jerry isn't in it, forget about it. my daughter went to a 3-day stand at Thomas Mack in Las Vegas, and Sting's quartet was opening for the Dead. And I said, how was Sting's band? She said, I don't know. We didn't go in there until the Dead started playing. I said, Amy, that's disappointing. I said, that's one of the best trios or best quartets. I mean, that had Sting on bass, Vinnie Colaiuta on drums.
Are you kidding me?
And a guitar player.
It's filthy.
Was playing with
I mean, and unfortunately, the people in the guys in the Dead, they would have been, they'd be bummed out if their people would be disinterested. But those people were just infected or just.
Hey, the guys in the Dead are sweetie pies. I've always loved all of them.
Yeah.
They're a lot of times they're busy, so I leave them alone. But every once in a while, I run into somebody. I was staying in the same hotel as Phil, and I went down real early, before I went into, going to the gym and work out, to get a cup of coffee. It was in Cleveland or something. There was Phil. I said, "Hey, Phil, what are you doing?" It was right after Jerry had passed away.
Oh, that's I mean,
so I said, hey,
dude,
man,
Bill Champlin.
He really kind of for a second didn't know who I was. I said, Bill Champlin. He said, "Oh, cool. Hey, how you doing?" I said, "I mean, how you guys holding up? I know you losing Jerry was a mess, but Jerry, I mean, they in a lot of ways they kind of lost him quite a bit before he passed."
But in a lot of ways, the whole history. Yeah, what year was the murder of Shalek? Do you remember?
I want to say 74.
Interesting.
75-ish.
Yeah.
73, 74, 75, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I know the ghost.
And at the time, I was thinking, man, New York's a really violent town. It turns out the little sleepy town of Mill Valley.
I don't mean to laugh. Dude, just gruesome stuff.
I was going, well, I goes to show you, once again, Bill missed that one by about 100 miles.
It did. We all miss it, man. I mean, at the end of the
Well, I saw two cabbies, duking it out over a fair in New York, and I went, this is not a place I want to be too much. I want take me back to Marin County where flowers and birds and trees and this is a little too citified for me. And I find out the very next morning that something really ugly had happened right in Mill Valley. It's like, oh man, give me a break. How could this have happened? I mean, that was one of me and Mario and Bill and Bill Gibson and Terry Haggerty, and I think Johnny Cola. We all carried Danny's coffin in it was a triple funeral. And there was nothing but helicopters, news helicopters covering the funeral. This was big news in the Bay Area.
It was essentially the same neighborhood that you and the Cipolinas lived in, or was it in a different town, or where exactly was it?
Right overlooking, where the main part of town is,
yeah.
The Mill Valley, right there. It's just up the hill from that. The first, you go up the hill and take the first left, and it was right there. It's on Lovell. I think it was on Lovell. Really a drag. It was just a drag. I mean, I don't think I've ever been so sad. It was just sad. This happened. When we got back, the FBI had David under lights for 8 hours. Because they knew, oh, you're in the Suns. This has got to be drugs. This has got to be drugs. It turned out to be some kid that had a resentment about Danny. And Danny was going to be good. He was great. He was the leader of Soundhole, which is great.
Well, no, but I'm trying to figure out. Are you telling me that at a certain, but Gibson and Mario never were the rhythm section for the Suns? I mean, you just guys you were the pallbearers.
Yeah, that's it. And then
Soundhole was a nasty band. They were unbelievable.
Oh, they were good.
Yeah,
they were good. Hey, Johnny Cola he's as good a singer as there is. I mean,
oh, dude,
Johnny Cola and Bill Gibson are still in the news. Mario left the band quite a while ago, and then but with Huey's whole hearing situation that he's going through, the news I don't think are going on. And I just was emailing back and forth with Johnny, who's an old pal. I mean, that guy sings his ass off. He's great. Johnny Cola.
Nasty.
Woo!
Yeah.
I don't think people get how good he is. He's a major piece of work for my mom. Always has been.
What is your memory?
I produce those guys.
What is just? We've had about 15 final questions here, but what was your memory of
the Charlatans with Tim Barnes?
The Charlatans, out of Virginia, or out of they were the first band to use light shows and all that kind of thing. Yeah, I always thought they were great. There was somebody in that band that ended up doing his own stuff, who was really a great singer and good songwriter.
Hicks was a sick bebop drummer too.
Yeah, Hicks was in that band, wasn't he?
You're 100% right. Yeah, you're 100% right. Yeah, and then he went on to do the Hot Licks. But yeah, that's.
Yeah. There's a creative. It was a totally creative guy. So there's good stuff that came out of there. I never actually saw him. I saw him one time. Didn't pay much attention to him. Because it was weird. I was just so far. In 1963, New Year's Day, I saw James Brown at Sweets Ballroom in Oakland. There was about half a normal amount of people to see the band, and it was a really a loose for James Brown show. It was really loose, and there was no turning back after that.
No, I did. I totally.
There was no turning back.
No, I did.
Oh my God, this is so. All the Skittle bands in the world just weren't going to turn my head. I was already totally struck by what that R&B thing could do. Rob Moitoza turned me on to James Brown live at the Apollo and Ornette Coleman in the same week.
Yeah, you're gonna grow. Your ears are gonna grow a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the first James Brown live at the Apollo. It's ridiculous. I think that was the Bible for R&B for a long, long time. Sure was for Tower Power. As they say, I still be digging James Brown. You know what I mean?
Well, Champlin's got a brand new bag, man. We just cooked for almost 2 hours, man. That was
anytime, Jake.
Yeah, man. And honestly, I'm humbled. Thank you for going there with me, and thank you for healing people for years, man. Keep it up.
Well, thank you, dude. It's good talking to you. I read some of the stuff that you did with Terry, and it's really good too.
Well, I love you guys. You guys are.
It really gets how great that guy is. He's amazing.
Well, it's just like the idea of I'm just going to say something. He said, that's what he said. He goes, Champlin used to say to us. He said when the inside's on the outside, that's when the real good stuff. I know I just butchered that comment, but I'm going to actually read it to you.
I can't remember it either.
No,
I spent top dollar on my memory loss.
Yeah, dude, I just want to be able to find this for you, but it's just because it's real.
I think the line is out of 1982A, which people say, what was that? What's that title mean? If you look at it closely on the album, it's the PO number for the album.
Are you kidding me?
Here had slated the cassette, and he says, "Okay, Sons of Champlin, 1982A," and we never could come up with a title, so we just went with that.
Unbelievable.
It's like somebody says, "Well, I know 25 or 64 is about LSD." No, it was 25 minutes or 26 minutes to 4 in the morning. 25 or 6 to 4. One of the most brilliant things Robert Lamb ever did. He came up with that. People were just. It was like, well, this was the Chicago's Paul is dead moment. You know what I mean? It's like, what does that really mean? What does that really mean?
Bless you, Champlin. I'll get you a copy. I'll email you a copy of this, man. Much love to you. We'll talk real soon. Be safe.
Good, buddy.
All right, man. Later on, bud. Peace.
Bye-bye.
Yep. Iconic figure, Bill Champlin. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back later on the Jake Feinberg Show.